When it comes to Fortune 500 company versus like let's say a lean startup, when it comes to helping them with their brand strategy, is there a difference between how do you approach each one, or do you kind of similar have a overall plan for how you approach a brand no matter what size of company it is?
Well, I think that foundational piece is really important. I mean, even whether you're talking about Fortune 500 enterprise brands or small bootstrapping solopreneurs.
This is Girl Take Note, a podcast for women who are looking to turn their dreams into reality. Hey, Stacy, welcome to the Girl Take Note podcast. How are you?
Great. I'm so happy to see you and meet you and be here with you.
Yeah, we're going to have a good conversation around branding. I feel like it's something people still need to understand how to build one successfully. And so I'm glad to have this conversation. So let's kind of talk about your career, because you kind of had a very incredible career working with some real giants like Google, Walmart, and Yahoo. Can you tell us about your journey and what sparked your interest in brand strategy?
Yeah. Well, the intention was to be a filmmaker, to be a director. And I started to get into that, and I had a little bit of success, but this is a lot. You can tell by the color of my hair here that is
beautiful
natural,
color,
not on purpose. That I started out a long time ago, and it was a time where there weren't a lot of content outlets, shall we say, and also not a lot of focus at all on diversity or inclusion when it comes to content, right?
Yeah.
And so I was in San Francisco and had to make San Francisco style rents. And while I was doing that and trying to, create this career for myself as a film director and writing my way into that through screenwriting, which again, I had a little bit of success. See me on IMDb.
Nice.
I discovered that people who are in business for themselves, no matter how smart, didn't know how to write. And I did, for whatever reason. Like, my dad was a photographer by trade, and so we had all sorts of images in my home. And my mom still to this day reads like a book a week. And so I grew up in this house with all this visual and written information, and it kind of just coalesced for me in that way. And when I made that discovery and had to pay the rent old school style, I went on Craigslist and I was like, do people pay people to write? And discovered that they did, and then started this business for myself that I did for about 10 years. We're just like out of youthful bravado, out of, like a want to have this roof over my head to pursue my passion of directing in the film world. I got into doing this work kind of by accident. But I did it successfully with just like I said, youthful bravado, and then a certain amount of facility when it comes to the written word and spoken word. And I mashed those things together with common sense and my interest in pop culture and things like that, and made a business for myself, and was successful enough as a single woman in San Francisco to buy a home, no small feat. But then the economy tanked in 2008, and I wanted to keep that thing over my head, right? I wanted to keep that roof over my head. So I went in-house while I was trying to develop this other, creative side gig. I went in-house, and like the names that you said, I went to, work for Walmart and Google and an agency. I had almost 5 years in an agency. And so my career journey has been a lot of what we're seeing right now, is that because I went into that world, a port in the storm during this, economic downturn in 2008, I spent the next 12 years at the top of brand storytelling in the crazy, volatile world of Silicon Valley, where I ended up getting laid off 6 times in the last 12 years.
Wow.
So like every couple of years, I'd have to wind up the machine again to fund my job hunt, looking for that paycheck, right? Wanting someone to kick into my 401k, pay my benefits and things like that, to fund my job hunt, right? Because I got wedded to that steady paycheck. But what I realized, like so many others of us during the pandemic, was work-life balance was out of balance. And I was dedicating my whole life and energy and time, so precious, to lining the pockets of others. And when I looked back on it, seeing that every couple of years I was getting laid off, I realized that it was an illusion that I had a steady paycheck, right? And so I decided to bet on me. So I've been doing this consulting work that I do now on and off for the last 20 plus years. But since the pandemic, I've bet on me and just going all in on trying to help startups and entrepreneurs beat the odds out there, harnessing all that great information that I learned over time from a bunch of startups in between time, but from like those big behemoths, like what are their secrets? I got them in my head, and I'm just really interested in giving that stuff away, generally for a fee though, right?
Yes, generally for a fee, of course.
Yeah, that's my thumbnail.
Yeah. You know what's so funny is that you mentioned being laid off and how numerous times, and I was recently laid off myself, which is kind of what made me start going like all in on the podcast. And you're right, it really does something to you in a space where you're like, I never want to be put in a position where something can be taken from me.
Yeah.
And it does. And you really want to say, I don't even want to try to go out there and find this thing again. I want to really just bet on myself because I was at a high position, high salary, and just for it to be gone so quickly, you're just like, oh my God. It's shocking. And it's that false sense of security that you think that this thing is going to be with you always for some reason.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, I think it's like anything else. I mean, maybe you relate to this as well, but it's like any other relationship, right? You got to retain yourself.
Yes.
Your ability to take care of yourself, even in the midst of committing to others or committing to a business. If you're going, in-house and you're an actual employee, there is some kind of tension there, right? Especially in this whatever capitalist society and all that stuff. 40 hours, we spend more time there than we do with our, family and friends, and what's important, or ourselves last of all, right?
Exactly.
So I get it. You got to retain yourself no matter what, I would say. And I think, there was a great reckoning. That was one of the silver linings out of this pandemic that we experienced together, is people got real straight on what health means, mental and physical, right? And a lot of us were out of balance when it came to how much we were grinding, just to, put that line in other people's pockets.
Yeah. I'm glad we're having this conversation when it comes to branding, because when we look at social media now, so because you've been in the business for such a long time, and storytelling is such a powerful tool today, and social media now has come into a place where I feel like everybody feels that they're a storyteller. Everybody is a brand. Everybody can tell people how to build a brand without having like the track record like you do, right?
Yeah.
What do you think of that? I find it interesting that social media now plays such a huge part, because you've seen the evolution of this industry. It plays such a huge part now today when it comes to telling your story and branding. How do you feel about social media in this whole world now?
It's so interesting because social media is us, right? Social media is an expression of human nature, right? The best of and the worst of. We're seeing it now, and how it's, messed with our political system, but also elevated all sorts of voices we weren't hearing before. So I don't know. I've been around long enough to know that the pendulum swings back and forth. And now that there's this glut, where the old Andy Warhol thing from billions of years ago was like, everyone will have their 15 minutes of fame. So everybody's chasing going viral and trying to make something work for themselves. And, those who have something to offer of value to people and have maybe some personal charisma, or demonstrate that interesting balance between courage and vulnerability, are really capturing the hearts and minds of people.
Yeah.
And also, we live in a consumer-centric, intense place.
Oh, yes,
where
we
people
do.
are like, oh, she seems convincing. I got to buy this portfolio thing for when I die that I need to put my will in, or whatever. Like, do I need that really? Can I just use a folder? I don't know. But like, I keep hitting that I don't know. I'm convinced now. So that's part of it too, is that people pay people millions and millions and billions of dollars to figure out what addicts the human mind, so that they can sell, products and services to them. And so we are, kids in particular, very susceptible to that. And there's a science to it, right? But there's also an art to having longevity. I mean, what's interesting about this 15 minutes of fame or 90 seconds of fame or something on TikTok is it does open up the opportunity for a lot of different voices, but it does also open the opportunity for intensive cancel culture, right? So it's
Oh,
not just politicians
yes.
anymore. It's not just
Mm-mm.
celebrities or athletes anymore. It's you and me, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it democratized things in a great way, but also in a way like in a watch out way, right?
yeah, yeah. Be careful what you say. Things, it's
Yeah.
so funny. Things in your past now can come back and really haunt you today and get you
Yeah.
canceled for stuff you said decades ago. So
Right.
it is that type of way. What do you think, with your experience with branding, what do you think is some of the essential elements of like effective brand storytelling that normally
Yeah.
resonate with the audience?
Well, this is what I do all the live long day. You know, I see it. I saw it on the enterprise level, like at Google
Mm-hmm.
and places like that. I've seen it at well-funded startups.
Yeah.
But lots of people mistake, like my cousin's, boyfriend's sister is a graphic designer. She can do a logo for me, right?
Yeah.
And I like the color blue or whatever it is. And like, boom, you got a brand, right? You just
Yeah.
like put a
Yeah.
website up on Squarespace or Wix or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And then, you have a brand, put some words to it or something, you have a brand. But that's not sustainable. There's no real there. So what I found, being a brand and creative director for as many years as I have, is that creative people like the copywriters or the designers, web
Mm-hmm.
developers, even folks that are doing your back end and what the functionality is on a website, if you have one,
Yeah.
they need something there to go on. And when you have articulated your mission, your vision, your values, your differentiating value propositions, the reasons people care about
Yeah.
you, and would come to you for whatever it is, coaching, products, I don't know, whatever it is, that has to have some meat on the bones, in order to really resonate with someone. So it's like you and I are having this real conversation right now.
Yeah.
You can tell when someone's phony. You can tell that
Oh
on a
yeah.
website as well, where you're just being sold,
Yeah.
and younger and younger generations growing up in this world can see that from a mile away,
Oh
right? And they
yeah.
want something that resonates, like what have you done for me lately? Like
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what do you stand for? And so
Yeah.
I think that not leaping over that is part of the key. 90% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. That's a ubiquitous quote, stat, whatever. And there's all sorts of reasons for that. Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't have product market fit.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not great at running a business, maybe your competition, is too far ahead of you or whatever it is. But this is one part of it. This is one part of it where people feel like they just need to go out on TikTok or go up, with a website and you're done. But it has to have something there. Again, back to
Yeah.
this dating thing. Like if you don't know who you are or what you want or what your boundaries are or who
Yeah.
you want to vibe with, it's hard to pair up,
Yeah.
and same thing with your customers or your users or whatever it is, authenticity speaks to people.
Oh yeah.
And you got to know where that's coming from. And that can come to life in your voice and tone, in your look and feel of whatever you do.
Yeah, yeah, I believe that 100%. We live in that culture where people just want everything now, and where people think that, well, as long as I'm on TikTok or Instagram, that's a brand, right? They
Yeah.
don't think about sustainability, profitability. Is it profitable? They just think, well, I have millions of followers on social media, and that's all I need, and now I'm this huge brand. Where you're like, well, what do you do for that community off social media? Like, how do you
Right.
take that off social media to actually build and nurture a
Yeah.
community and build a brand? Like, I think that's where it kind of is different, because I talk to a lot of creators and I'd be so surprised where a lot of them have huge followings but don't have an email list. You know,
Right.
like, it's
Right.
just
So
so
is it a
weird.
vanity thing, right? Is it like a
Yeah.
vanity thing? It's like,
Yeah.
boom, here's my business card. Same thing, like, boom, here's my business card.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah. So that's why back to the human nature thing, it's like, again, kind of back to high school or whatever, where at some point, your popularity rings empty
Yeah.
if you're not being authentic or adding value. And I would say that people get bored. I mean, we have really short attention spans. And
Very
so
short.
people can skyrocket. And except for the Kardashians that just were like the cannot die. I don't know what's happening
They
over there. They
can't. They
just,
just can't. They can continue to make the same show over
it's
and
an
over
anomaly,
and
but
over.
whatever. It's, it's a, yeah, but they do have products and stuff, right? They're just
Yeah,
like
they do.
always
They
morphing.
do.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
this is like makeup's not enough. Now I'm doing underwear, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
they keep moving, right? They can like a shark. They keep
They keep
moving, but
evolving, I guess. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Their brands, their strategy, and everything that they do just really
right.
keep
Right. So it was
evolving.
all about their stuff. And then it was,
Mhm.
like relationship, and now
Yep.
it's
Yep.
baby things or whatever. So there's that. I mean, they're the whatever, height of what one can do,
Yeah, they
to
are.
make
That's true.
something out of nothing, right?
Yeah.
Something out of nothing. But again, people just get bored. So at some
Yeah.
point, I was just thinking about all the people that I followed and all the podcasts that I listened to that I don't
Mhm.
anymore. And just
Yeah.
think like, why? Even something
Yeah.
like Smartless that I really like. I enjoy those guys, and they couldn't be more successful and bought by Amazon and then Spotify or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, I love them, and the formula is starting to get a little old. Been there, done that,
Yeah.
seen that,
Yeah.
and I think it's not like any other relationship, right? Again, you got to keep it fresh.
You got to keep it fresh. You
You
really
got to keep
do.
it fresh, and that's
You
a lot
know,
of energy. That's a
oh,
lot of energy.
yeah, it is. It really is. When it comes to Fortune 500 company versus like let's say a lean startup, when it comes to helping them with their brand strategy, is there a difference between how do you approach each one, or do you kind of similar have a overall plan for how you approach a brand, no matter what size of the company it is?
Well, I think that foundational piece is really important. I mean,
Mm,
even whether you're talking about Fortune 500 enterprise brands or
yeah,
small bootstrapping
yeah,
solopreneurs or whatever it is, that the foundational underpinning is a really important grounding thing, not only for you to build a differentiating brand that's infused with some authenticity that's going to ring true to people and, have them be more responsive,
yeah,
but it's also about that you got to, figure out budget wise what you can and cannot do, right? That's the
yeah,
big
absolutely.
difference. So somebody like whatever Google can pay for, the influencer, right? They can pay
Yeah,
for all these people that can reach people and have all the science behind it. And so for someone that doesn't, it's a little bit about trial and error, right?
yeah,
So it's,
exactly.
but the whole world is true, whether you're, Google or some sort of unknown somebody. And even Google's getting, disrupted now by Perplexity. Are
Oh
you
yeah,
using Perplexity?
I am not.
Do you know about it?
I don't know about
Okay,
them.
we'll talk after this though.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like Google meets ChatGPT and totally upsetting Google's, whole game for sure.
Oh yeah, we definitely got
But
to
yeah,
talk
we'll
about
talk
that.
about that. But I think the difference is that because you don't have budget and you got to be scrappy,
Yeah.
it's all about, but for either one of them, it's about these days, it's about making some best assumptions that you can, and
Hmm.
then testing, learning, and iterating. So not
Yes.
staying static or wedded to it. You've got to keep looking at social listening and looking at whatever numbers are coming back at you and making those adjustments, being again sort of like courageous and vulnerable and going to your clients or customers or whatever it is to ask them how it's going or what they want, what's
Yeah.
resonating with them. So I mean, it's all the same whether you're growing a business, pivoting a business, or launching a business,
Yeah.
but it is about budget, right? It's
Yeah.
about budget. So you got to be creative and patient,
100%. That's what it
right?
comes down to. Ask you this question. Because we were just talking about it, how noisy the digital landscape is now with social media and things changing so fast. Like you mentioned, people attention span are so short. How do a brand really though make a significant and meaningful connection with their target audience?
Yeah.
Because things change so fast on social media.
Yeah. I think it depends, right? I think it really
Yeah.
depends. I mean, I remember, I was maybe gonna work with these two guys who had been in the real estate space, but
Hmm.
they invested some of their money that they had made into doing market research to find the white space in other
Mm.
spaces so that they could create a business around it just because no one else was, so that they could make money.
Yeah.
And so they got into the candy business, and it just fell flat because there again was no there. There was no sincerity. There was no interest. There was no passion for that. There was no expertise in that area, but not that going after mercenary ways in which to make money is a bad thing at all. Hustling. I mean, I've been hustling for a long time. I got it. But I think that the main thing that folks got to do is that not to just show up in one place. And again, that can be exhausting if you don't have a good plan around it. So if you're on TikTok, depending on your audience, you got to be on Instagram. And I was also working with like a supplement client of mine, and to make that human connection that you're asking about, IRL events were really important.
Yeah.
So to go out and meet her customers and have be able to telegraph her passion, and then to create like a bunch of ambassadors in the moment that were tasting, like taste testing or whatever her stuff, was really important. So I think it's just about capacity and not spreading yourself too thin, but knowing that unless you have something really specialized, like you're a business and LinkedIn is really going to work for you because that is your audience, period. You still may want to show up at events, right?
Yeah,
and
that's true.
and tell people about what you're doing there. So I think you got to go in a few different verticals or lanes in order to get that momentum, that critical mass in there.
Do you think brands should be on every platform, or should they just find the platform that best fits them? Because I do know a lot of us try to spread ourselves so thin because we feel like, well, we need to be on every channel, have every channel, right? Every marketing touch point, basically, when it comes to social media, at least. Do you suggest that, hey, try to make sure you have some type of presence, or do you say find a platform that actually where your audience resonate with you the most?
Well, that's what's hard about it, right? Is because there's so many brands right now that started creating their following, community, interest, business on Instagram, that have experimented with TikTok, that many people think skews younger, but is really blowing up for older people that are really, loving the content that's on there, and the quick hits of it, that don't have time, that have their whole full lives and things like that. So I think it's more about getting out there, not spreading yourself too thin so that you drive yourself mad. But experimenting with your audience. I mean, know where your audience is showing up and what kind of content they're responding to. So the Instagram audience could be very different than the TikTok audience, but there is, some alignment there. But it's also about conserving your resources of time and mental energy and budget, right? To be where it's most productive, I think, and so sometimes it's like, even for whatever big, huge companies or the well-funded startups that I work with, we go out everywhere and then see what resonates and then start calibrating. Like we go 80-20 Instagram, and then Facebook, right? That there might be a really rabid audience that creates a community around something on Facebook that you didn't anticipate, but that the sales are better over here in Instagram, but word of mouth is really coming together for you on Facebook, So I think it's just about testing and having the intestinal fortitude to hang out while you get those numbers back.
Yeah. Back in the day, I felt like when these platforms started, they all used to be so different. Right. And now today it seems like they're all just becoming the same outside of YouTube, because YouTube long form video is just what it's going to be. And they introduce shorts, and now they have a communities piece where you can add photos, I just feel like everything now is just becoming so the same, where I pick and choose really how much time, like you said, I spend on each platform, because I'm like, it's almost the same. And TikTok is now doing photos. I don't know why, but they want you to put photos on the platform now, where Instagram used to be nothing but photos. And so it's hard to see.
It's hard to differentiate. I mean, we're in a real place. This is relatively new still, especially the TikTokification of America. I mean, there was Vine before that and stuff, and certainly
like people don't even remember Vine. We used to use Vine.
But not so much for commerce, right? It was a lot of personal stuff.
Video,
but I just read an article that LinkedIn is trying to TikTokify itself as well. So we're going to be seeing a lot more encouragement and in their algorithm rewards for video content, short form video content, because that's what happens, right? Is that people understand that this is how we're getting used to and responding to content. So businesses like LinkedIn are like, oh, this is what people are responding to. We need to adjust, right?
Yeah.
And they're not wrong, but I think, time will tell, but it feels like we don't have any time. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
pressure of trying to
Yes.
create a brand and
Yeah.
being in business for yourself, or being in business, period, is that intensity, that urgency about the go to market plan, right? And the
Yeah.
roadmap around all that stuff is that, patience is a virtue, and budget doesn't allow lots of times. But all this stuff is going to shake out over time, but it may all, I mean, just like America, it
Yeah.
may, a lot of it, whatever bubbles to the top, look alike.
Yeah.
But then there will be this revolution, hopefully. Well, there will be disruptors where there will be real diversity and,
Yeah.
reflected.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I feel like with TikTok is more becoming, and I think someone said this to me, or either we just had this conversation, because of the way it's moving when it comes to their TikTok shop, TikTok sellers shop, and stuff like that. It's really becoming more like a home shopping network to me.
No.
Like they push their product push is so strong
Yeah.
versus like, I feel like social media, and you kind of let me know your opinion. Social media to me is really moving away from just the entertainment piece it used to be and the socializing piece of it, where it's really
Yeah.
becoming about e-commerce. Like it's becoming about pushing sales, people making money and people buying products. It's really becoming that to me.
I know. I'm so pissed off about that because I,
Yeah.
cut the cord years ago and just do streaming TV. I love
Yeah.
TV. I grew up with TV. I'm an only child. It was like my best friend, my sibling growing up. So I
Yeah.
still, am entertained by TV, but I got rid of that in part because I got rid of commercials. Don't have to go through that stuff. But now
Yes.
you can't get through a lot of that content, even if you're paying for it. You got to go through the commercials. And
Yeah.
so now it's like this stealthy thing because it's entertaining and they have
Yeah.
influencers and whatever. So they can like seduce you, like any other relationship, seduce you into thinking that it's content. And then suddenly you're like, I need that. The stupid
Mhm.
folio thing with the will in it and whatever. I need that.
Yeah, we do.
But
It does influence us. It really do.
it does. Influencers influence. And also, like we said, cancel culture, getting
Yeah.
bored, played
Yep.
out, all that stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
So how
Um,
do brands, because I know a lot of brands do have influence, like a lot of brands now have influencer marketing departments, well, not departments, but just someone who handle influencer
yes,
marketing, someone who handle
departments,
social media. Yeah,
departments.
departments. So it's like, how do you see, let's talk about the longevity of that. Do we really see that being something that is sustainable, being that, like you said, an old tweet would come out and say, hey, you know what, you said this and you're kind of racist and now you're so connected to our brand and now we got to do this damage control.
Right,
Like,
right, right.
how much of that we see maybe might actually kind of like not go away, but brands might start to shy away from hiring these influencers to promote their products?
Well, I think, that's why there's such focus on so-called micro influencers or
Yes.
micro influencers now, that because people are, big, huge companies are paying people millions and millions of dollars
Mm-hmm.
to get in bed with them. Again,
Yep.
back to relationships, to get in bed with them. The next thing you know, it's somebody like, I don't know what, the latest one, Josh Charles or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. The makeup guy got involved in something. People are like, ugh.
Yeah.
And so the companies, just like, whatever, athletes, stars, politicians, whatever, they get
Yes.
into trouble. So I think businesses will, like, probably the contracts have I imagine, like, bigger clause and morality clauses in them now,
Mm-hmm.
where they
Mm-hmm.
probably didn't even think of that before, but bigger
Yeah.
morality clauses, like you have to exemplify the morality, integrity of the brand or X,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
to create some incentive for them. It could even be like some sort of a monetary issue, right?
Yeah.
Around that. But I think that probably what will continue to happen is that folks that have a smaller but devout following,
Mm-hmm.
that aren't so much on the radar,
Yeah.
may have a little bit more power for time until they grow their business. They get
Yeah.
seduced by that. They become,
Yep.
an influencer, and then inevitably fall from grace. I mean, this is the American story, right?
It
Is
really
that we
is.
love to build people up and then tear them down.
Tear them
And
down.
then we're all human too. Like, do you want to be an influencer?
Yeah.
Or like live a squeaky clean life and get rid of everything, on your socials before you get into that?
Yeah.
Do you want to be something that you're not, or do you want to be a human? Maybe some brands will sign up for the human no matter what. I don't know.
Yeah. No matter what. And that's a lot of people do. I'm so glad you said that, build you up to bring you down, because I feel like that's happening so much on social media, where they build up these big creators, and as soon as they say something that goes against their political views, religious views, or whatever it may be, and then all of a sudden they're just like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I'm like, of course I can believe it. Because, when people come on here and they cut that camera off, you really don't know who they are behind that camera, but you put people on pedestals, and that's something you should not do. So when they show you that they're against your political views, what you expect from them.
Right. And they have a right to that, right?
Yeah,
And
it's their
then we have a right to
American
say
right.
things anyway. Yeah, we have the
It's the
right to
way.
say things anyway. But that's the American thing, is right. Build them up, tear them down, and then we love a second chance.
Yes.
Right? How
A
many
good
people got
comeback
swept up?
story.
Yeah. How many people got swept up in the J-Lo and Ben Affleck,
Oh, yeah.
complete whatever, like wedding fantasy show that everybody was like, I don't know. Like they broke up, don't do it. Like they broke up the first time. I don't know.
Yes, we all do.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, so looking at the future of branding, and we want to talk about AI, because it's only going to get more better, and it's going to take away a lot of things. It's going to introduce a lot of things. And where do you see AI when it comes to the future of branding? Because, right now, ChatGPT can just write everything for us, right? Because like you said, people are not good writers. I don't proclaim to be a good writer myself. Without ChatGPT, I probably wouldn't know how to write at all. And sometimes I wonder, what did I do? This is how this is how much of a slave I am to ChatGPT, because I say to myself, what did I do before ChatGPT?
Right.
How did I write blog articles and captions? And how did I do it? Because we're so dependent on them.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing for me because I started in copywriting, right? So, I got into screenwriting in order to try to be a director. I got into, held on to copywriting to get into this world of brand marketing and creative direction. And so for me, having led teams of writers and designers and things like that, but writers, talk about that, is that if I hired ChatGPT today to write for me, I would fire it because it's great at English, right? It's got the English language down.
Yes.
But there's no sense of nuance. And I find myself as a writer frustrated, like, because it's not a human, I can yell at it. Like, no, you're not following my prompts. What is wrong with you? Are you getting stupider over time? I don't have to worry about HR. But I think that, junior copywriters are a thing of the past. I think that in the marketing world, that all writers will become editors. And what I'm seeing, and certainly what I'm experiencing, is that you're only as good as your prompts, right? Because it can take an enormous amount of time. Like you do a blog and you say, I want to write a blog about blah, 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 and here's my target audience or whatever it is. I find that the prompts that I write today are like a huge page long to have all that nuance in there to try to build that in. Otherwise, I'm spending a ton of time editing and trying to impose some humanity in there, right? So it doesn't sound like, an AP English person or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, but I think it has already disrupted things. The last two clients I had where I was doing a maternity backfill for somebody at a connected fitness company. And our thing was about engagement.
Yeah.
Trying to get their subscriber base to stay happy and give off good word of mouth and stuff. And there was so much work to be done. And we really desperately needed a copywriter, but they're like, but you have ChatGPT. Why don't you just use ChatGPT? It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll focus on here, but we'll just use ChatGPT. Threw that stuff up and they're like, this copy is horrible. It's like, hey man, you said like we're supposed to use it. This is what it does, right?
Yeah.
So I think hopefully, ideally in the work world, most everywhere, AI is going to augment us as humans as if we had a prosthetic brain, like a like another room, you know, in our brains, like a spare
Yeah.
room that we could
Yeah.
call on, right?
Yeah.
Instead of replacing us. But I think that, you know, you can. So what I do is foundational brand strategy stuff. And then I, you know, stick around with entrepreneurs and businesses to operationalize that stuff and make social media ads and websites and engagement campaigns and things like that. But for me, it's AI has gotten rid of the tyranny of the blank page, which I think you could relate
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
But the hope is I think, is that it's going to augment us rather than replace us. But you can say, if you're a business owner, you can replace me and you can say, you know, here's my audience, here's what my brand is. Get a brand strategy or a content strategy or a blog, you know, editorial calendar, or you can put all that in there. But somebody still needs to do the work, right?
Yeah. I
I
just
mean,
want to say
there's
it's the
people integrating
execution.
those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, the human gets in there at some point.
And that's the one thing I can say. You can put the plan into ChatGPT. It can, you know, spit out a plan for you, but it's the execution now. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, how do I actually do this now? Now that they've given it to me, how do I actually make this happen? And they'll tell you, but you still like, still I don't understand how I make this happen itself. So that's why I think the human part comes into play.
The human part, for now, the human part comes in. There are businesses that can do that, where you come up with that plan and then you can hire somebody to execute it. But I think it can be really, really helpful. And also could make us all seem more homogenous too. Right. So if you're getting your editorial calendar plan and I'm getting my editorial calendar plan, you know, whatever it is, that we could all end up looking the same when we're just on the brink of trying to have a world or a country, America, where, you know, we look different, and that's really great.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true. Well, Stacy, listen, it's been a good conversation and I'm going to bring this to an end, but is there one thing you're excited about the future of branding? Is there something that is exciting you about what's about to happen here in this arena, that is?
Yeah, well, I think it is true with AI that there is this kind of, thanks for asking. That's a great question. There is this democratization, right? So that in my experience, entrepreneurs know their stuff. They could be brilliant people. I worked with a couple of like Columbia grads who had this incredible idea, but had no facility with business. And, you know, ChatGPT and the like, Perplexity, which we'll talk about, can replace a lot of time and mentorship or education and cut to the chase for you. But you still need to, you know, focus on your own personal development around that too. It's like getting into a relationship, like marrying somebody when you're 14 years old or something like that. Maybe you're not as developed as you should be. Right? So same thing, back to relationships. But I think the exciting thing is that more people with different ideas can get a leg up, you know, and that they can have a thought partner, which is how I use AI today, is a thought partner rather than a replacement or a cut to the chase for me. It's like, how do I validate my ideas or pressure test them?
Yeah, I like that. You said something else that I like that I never heard people use it like that before, was that ChatGPT has taken away the blank page of just staring at, trying to figure out how I started. And I never heard nobody actually articulate in that way. And I like that. That is awesome. I'm gonna steal that, Stacy. So just so you know, if you start hearing me saying it, just know I'm gonna put credit Stacy.
Thank you. I'll take it. Maybe we'll trademark it together. We'll use ChatGPT how to trademark it together.
How to trademark it, exactly. Stacy, listen, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show and having this conversation with me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. I am Shaunie Sanders. This is the Girl Take No Podcast, and I will talk to you next time.